Greetings and welcome. My name is Steve Muhammad. And today we're going to be interviewing a brother Dawud Muhammad on a very serious subject, and we're talking about the economic collapse. I know many of you find that title shocking, but I think that once you hear what we're going to reveal and expose to you in this show, will help you to see that it is inevitable and that you need to begin to prepare yourself, your family, your friends, your loved ones. Now, how can you begin to prepare yourself for this economic collapse? And we're going to give you some answers in today's show. So before we open up, we want to open up in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, asking on His guidance in this program to bring you this information. With us today we have Brother Dawud Muhammad, and greetings, my brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, sir, indeed. Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, sir. And first of all, before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
I'm basically the owner and founder of Joseph Visions Technologies and Economic Development, and we own a company, JMS Solar Network and Associates, and also the international radio talk show host, Talk Black Live Radio, that we started over approximately 20 years ago. And in that, we talk about the topics of dealing with what we call technology transfer, dealing with the subject of green technology. We're talking about solar energy, and where my background is as an engineer. We actually design solar systems that deal with battery backup systems, grid-tied or battery backup systems, during times of power outages. And for years, we've been advocating get off the grid, do something for ourselves by looking at owning our own power.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so what we wanted to go ahead and do is get into this subject, economic collapse. Brother Wisdom, can you share with us and give us some understanding and some light into this subject? I mean, is this something that I'm just throwing out there, or is this something that, you know, those who are viewing this should take seriously?
I would like to say very, very, very seriously. We're beginning to see the end from what we're hearing and what we see right now from what we've been taught. We're looking at a old world going out and a new world coming in. The first thing we have to do is get rid of the lie. That is the first thing we got to get rid of. The first lie is that we're living in under a free society, or we're living in the free market.
Right.
You always hear the news people, or you hear the politician or government say, well, let the free marketplace address the systemic problems that we see within the community, and that it will correct itself. Well, that's, what they're talking about, that they call what they call is a free marketplace, does not exist. And that's the first lie. And the first education behind that thought is that, one, when you start talking about a free market, then how can the free market be free if you, as a society, exist under a monopoly? Because the free market is supposed to be a concept of which you're supposed to be in an environment that you could be free to compete in the free market. But if you're not able to compete, then how can it be a free market?
Right.
And that's the question that we got to begin to think about, because now, because of technology, the only thing that for black people, the only thing that we had to barter with, and that's why the Honorable Muslim Elijah Muhammad warned us to do for self or suffer the consequences, is that now we're in a position where technology is displacing the need for human labor. The only thing that we had to barter with when we came from off that plantation was that, and we're still on, we just left one plantation to another plantation, but is that the human labor within itself was the only thing that we had to barter with. We didn't have no money. The only thing that we could say, well, look, I tell you what, I'll cut your yard for you if you give me a couple of those chickens over there. That's bartering.
Right.
You see, you know, but see now when we start talking about sharecropping, and and then back in the day they used to tilt the scale. So how could that even be any free true justice in that when you might have weighed picked 1,000 pounds or 100 pounds of cotton, but when you take it there to the mill, the Roman pagan slave master, he's got his hand tilting the scale saying, oh, you didn't pick 100 pounds, you only picked 50 pounds. So so in other words, that we're just going to pay you half for what we think, what you know for a fact that you picked 100 pounds of cotton. But now, how can you compete in a society that does not allow for true free competition within that society or within that market? So that's where we begin to question what are we talking about a society for black people. We have never known what it is to be a citizen of that society, let alone talk about it being a free economic market. So basically, we could go more into that, but at this particular point, as I can close saying that now it's more serious than ever before, because now that labor has got to compete with other people, and that is that not only does those other people also got to compete with machines, with automation, animation, with technology. And when that technology you got to compete with, when one machine could do the job of 5 men, then now value of your labor become less and less, particularly when you are living within somebody else's society. But if we're doing something for ourselves, and as most said, is separate and with reparation, that's the theme right now behind the Million Man March that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and our Aaron, Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, presented by saying that we must separate, and so that we could do something for ourselves. Our labor is no longer needed within another person's society when they can replace your labor with the technology that they now have.
So let's go ahead and go over that real quick, Brother Wisdom, as we talk about the collapse of this economy. What we're saying is basically, even if we're not really talking about the collapse of the economy, what we are talking about is the replacing of human labor with robotics and other type of technology. And therefore, the masses of the people are in all actuality no longer needed, because now we have robots and machines that can do what humans used to do. And some of the things that we see that the robots and the machines are doing, we see them in the factory places where not only do you have to worry about the factory in your city, you don't have to worry about it being shipped off necessarily to a cheap foreign labor market. Now what you have to worry about is the robotics coming in, replacing the human beings that used to put these parts together. Another part that most people may not look at is the fact that the prison industrial complex also plays a part in this, where you have, I believe, the American population only making up 5% of the world population, but having 25% of the world population incarcerated. And we know that that number has reached 2 million plus, and that nearly half of that 2 million consists of Black and Hispanic.
And that is correct, and it's growing. I mean, there was a time when you had maybe about anywhere from 150,000 to 250,000 women, Black women in prison. Now those numbers are growing. They're reaching to a point of over 500,000 of Black women going into the prison industrial plantation system. And they're going about it in so many different ways. For example, that's why we've been taught to actually have our own schools. We raise our own children, but you got parents that want to try to get their children into a better school system, a school district, but if they don't live in that district, they could go to jail because of the fact that they're trying to get in pursuit of seeing their child to get a better education, maybe in another district or another ward. But if they don't live in that ward, then if they got their child in there and they saying, well, you lied about where your child lived, then you could, and they could, that's another way that they put women in jail. So it's a really a no-win situation. This is why separation is so important right now, because there is no justice coming. If not only do we see that the economic collapse is here, but there is no justice unless we do something for ourselves. That's the only way we can expect to see justice is when we give ourselves justice. And that is for what we need to be doing economically.
We know that many of the college students, once they graduate, they're graduating with a tremendous student loan that once again makes them a slave to the system.
But this debt that here you got people with their bachelor's, their master's degrees, some even got their doctorate degrees, and they're in debt by $150,000, $200,000 in debt just before they even get started out the gate. And this is what you're referring to. And I'm saying that we have a whole new way of thinking now that we need to really look at a whole new architecture. And here, not only on this show, I hope to say that we're not only here, we reserve the right to give our own critical analysis of the problems that we see that are systemic within the society. But here we want to be able to outline and offer some serious solutions that we really need today than ever before.
Right. And let's just, so we can paint this picture to help people to see why this collapse is inevitable. We look at the global markets, and the global markets are to a large degree attached to the American market. But in a documentary, for instance, I believe it's entitled "When Corporations Rule the World," it basically was talking about the premise of how you have this huge top-heavy part of the economy, and you have the masses of the people who aren't even able to afford the products that they produce. As a matter of fact, there was one article that read that if you're not making at least $14 an hour, then you are not able to live on your own by yourself, because you're not able to afford the house insurance or renter's insurance, car insurance, much less the rent, which they're saying now is almost half of an individual's income just to pay their rent. So now you have an economy globally as well, where the masses of the people are working for less than minimum wage, what many would call slave wages, where, as one person told me, during slavery, at least the slave master had to take care of the slave, but that's called chattel slavery. But he said what economic slavery is when the slave has to take care of themselves. And so we're looking at an economy where people are, as you were saying, one paycheck above water, and if they miss the paycheck or they lose their job, then they're in dire straits.
You know, I wanted to, you so wonderfully describe this, and it gets, the whole scenario has been going on for generations. And what I wanted to really highlight is that is first, you know, for those who, one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing is that a lot of people don't accept or believe that they don't seem to connect the racism, how that's part of a tool to support a white privileged society. Mm-hmm. And what I call it, like, for example, let's start with what you were just saying. The U.S. dollar is what is the currency that backs by oil. Anybody that want to buy oil around the world, the United States government has an agreement that all oil is to be purchased in the U.S. dollar. Mm. So then when all of a sudden, but there has not been any new oil refineries been brought online. So there has always been a control mechanism on the supply and demand of that oil. So then all of a sudden, now that they connected, Iran is online to bring in the oil, They're even saying that the new electric cars are the cause of the oil prices at the pumps, because the electric cars are now, including solar. They're trying to say that maybe some of the reasons why you're seeing the drop in the oil prices. Now, what this is meaning that, what the analyst is hoping for, what we're talking about, economic analyst is hoping for, that they're saying now that that's supposed to bring in, as gas prices drop, that it's supposed to be able to bring in an additional $1,500 a month back into the person's, back into the, what do you call it, the consumer income, or medium income, should rise because of the drop in the cost of the gasoline.
Right.
So, but now here's the thing that we haven't noticed. Or at least I'm saying is, have we, they say that, but really, the price of food actually had jumped over 100% or more, 150%, at the supermarket. So the cost of just eating, just to buy food, which was directly linked to the rise of the food, the rise of the oil prices at the pump. So now that the gas prices have dropped, have we seen any food prices drop?
No.
Okay. Now we see, this is where we begin to start thinking outside. Okay. Now, what else rose? There was a number of things. Plastics, your textiles, the textile industries. There's a lot of derivatives that come from just having oil that is used to create the plastics and all these other things. Have you seen the cost of certain electronic items drop? And matter of fact, so is this another process? Now, when you look at the $32 or $34 trillion that the United States government is in debt to the world, you're looking at this thing get real deep. But what it is, look at us as a people. How are we on the same equal footing as other ethnic groups in this society? And let me give you some example to think about. Every ethnic group that you could point at, they are engaged in they engage in dual citizenship. They engage in international affairs. I'm talking about international trade policies and currency exchange. I'm going to repeat that again because, see, what I just said really is something to think about.
Right.
We're not engaged in currency exchange. So what I'm saying is, whether you're a European, that is, you're Catholic, German, you're Jewish, if you're Italian, they're actually in the Irish are actually engaged in international trade policies that connect to their ethnicity. But when you look at us, and then look at our Hispanic brothers and sisters. They take the U.S. dollar and they exchange it into the peso in Mexico. Look at the brothers, the people from India. They exchange it into what is it? We got the peso. Then over there they got the rubies. Okay, you see where I'm coming from?
Right.
Okay, so now they're able to deal with this currency exchange to their benefit. But where are we connected at where we're actually helping Mother Africa? Where are we able to get into this international trade policy where we can be able to connect with our money with the CD in Ghana and what is the trying to get the currency name for the exchange for in Nigeria. And then we look at all the other international, when we start looking at Ethiopia, we start looking at the Congos in South America, how we could be able to actually be real mature players on the international market. But we can't compete. You can't compete if we don't have a strong currency of our own, or even if we're using the U.S. dollar, it's not benefiting us because all it's being used for is to maintain a white privileged society that really, be honest with you, has actually, I call them white extortionists, that extort money through the property tax and through the real estate tax of the black community. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I sat back and looked at my own family, and we pay property tax, and believe it or not, and just one of my family members, we've been paying property tax for over 100 years. If you count your aunts you count your uncles, you count your nieces and your daughters, and you count your sons and nephews who may own homes, all in the same community that you live in. And look at Ferguson, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Ferguson was generating up to $24 million a year. Out of the budget, you look at that budget, they were getting $3 billion. And matter of fact, on the day that they murdered Brown, they were already increasing every year 1.5 to 1.3 million, and all the way up to $3 million, up to that up to the point of when Darren Wilson, that officer, that criminal, shot Brown out in the street.
Mm-hmm.
So now in that budget, you got something like I think it was like 1 million or 1.7 million or whatever. It could have been more. Let's say if it was 24 million, 2.4 million. I'm sorry, 2.4 million dollars out of that $24 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
That went to just electricity. That just the lights and everything that you see in that city.
Mm-hmm.
Now we studied that, and now we came up with a plan of our own that we could be able to say that people who own their homes are paying $2,000 to $3,000 or $5,000 a year just in property tax. Some might call it real estate tax, but that's you might be paying both. You may be paying real estate tax and property tax. You may be paying, just because you own a car, you still got to pay, like in Missouri, you have to pay property tax on your car, on your vehicle. So now look at where black people really, just look at this, black people, because I don't want you ever thinking that you are not participating in the process. You've been participating in this process for a long time. And what I mean by that is that here it is, when it comes down to when white folks want to go do something, like for example, look at St. Louis, they talking about building a brand new stadium down there, but who's going to pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
See, you're talking about paying for that through your property tax or through your sales tax. But you don't have nothing that you mean to tell me that you've been paying this, but you ain't got nowhere where you can see where that money is directly tied to businesses, that money, that percentage of that money is going to help enrich and strengthen black businesses in your community, and to even upgrade your community, to modernize your community. Well, you know what? We're tired of it now.
Some of the things that you're talking about, we also have, a situation where our community is not, it's bleeding out, if you will. Because as you were talking about the property tax and the real estate tax, we also have foreigners who come in, Korean, Arab, and so forth, and they service our needs. However, there's no reciprocity in the relationship. So the money is siphoned out, but they never add to or support any local programs.
Brother, let me make this point clear. Do you know right now in St. Louis, they're talking about bringing over 60,000 Bosnians or Europeans into the heart of the North St. Louis black community. Now, let me explain something. They're not asking them who's paying for the plane ticket over here. They're not asking them where they're going to live or where they're going to get a home or where they're going to stay and how they're going to be able to start their businesses. And that's the same way with a lot of these foreigners that moved into the black community. Half of them, 90% of them can't even speak English well, but yet no one is asking them where did they get their banking account? Where did they get their checking account at? Where to even start your business? How did you even get the money? And matter of fact, they didn't even ask them about their credit rating. But yet here it is, when it comes down to us, they start looking at us talking about where's your credit, and really that's another part and another tool of a system to suppress black people. And what we're talking about, when you look at the city of Ferguson, is an excellent example to be examined, because they're talking about economic disparity. Also talking about voteless apathy. The reason why they must have voteless apathy so that they can maintain power, political positioning, and control over the money they extort out of the black community. They can maintain their racist, white supremacist position because white extortionism support white privileged society.